Perhaps he is steel, and I am the hand. Another entry revealed. The fictional diaries of Jack the Ripper.
Entry 5. The School Where Wind Writes. 1865. Chapter 1. Voices in the Rafters. The path to school was a narrow, thought the morning wished to complete. I walked it because one walks paths that know one. Wind wrote upon the hedge and caught in thorns like words upon a tongue that cannot decide. I no longer counted puddles. I measured their depth by my breath. A shallow one. One breath. A deep one. Two. Between breaths, the village lay like an animal that shows itself without fleeing. Within me walked someone who need not keep pace. He did not name himself. He walked beside me, not behind, not before. He nodded when I minded unevenness, and kept silent when I stumbled. People say this is conscience, or demon. I say it is order demanding a second body. A body that neither eats nor sleeps, only holds the world's edges when day threatens to lose them. The school stood where wind always finds it. The gable bore winter's handwriting. The pipes sang when the stove spoke properly. Upon entering, air smelled of chalk and wool, and of something I later understood as children's fine weariness. Weariness has a sweet edge, similar to blood's but quieter. I noticed it as one notices a color lying beneath another. The teacher set the date upon the board, and chalk's stroke sounded like a thin knife, wanting nothing for itself. I took my place in the second row, that uncontentious location. Front belongs to ambition, back belongs to excuses. Between sits methodology. I am its friend. Beneath the bench lay the slate of a boy who looked away more often than toward. His name slipped from corners like bread from a plate's edge. I regarded the slate and heard it speak. Some things speak without sounds. They show where they yield when taken seriously. The crack in the upper corner said, "Hold me here." I held. The class murmured. Wind passed through the window's gap and wrote its name in dust, illegible but present. Within me began a quiet calculation none had set. 2 rows of eyes, 10 fingers growing bored, a clock cutting day into thin slices. I divided both, the room and myself, into halves. One part does what school demands, moves lips, holds chalk, raises hand when asked. The other part counts the sound when chalk breaks. The fracture sounds different when teacher causes it than when a child's hand does. Quieter, more guiltless. The world is full of small, guiltless breaks.
Oh, where are my manners? My name is Grimwick. And that was just one page of tonight's diary.
Chapter 2. The Board and the Knife That Is Not. Chalk is a knife from which blood has been taken. It cuts air into lines and leaves what was cut, clinging to the board. No one calls stop when it begins. No one speaks of sin when it ends. I observed the teacher's hand. She guided chalk with that watchfulness known only to people who understand that errors are not errors but prematurely born results. Her letters had the size of decisions that do not boast. She wrote weights and measures. A child. The giggle fell to the floor and lay there like something to be retrieved later. The teacher placed scales upon the bench. 2 dishes. One tongue that speaks only truth when none press it. I saw the tongue and heard my own. They are not alike. Mine keeps silent when useful. The scale's tongue cannot be silent. It trembles, finds the point, grows still, but does not keep silent. It is not silence when the world forces you quiet. Silence is only silence when one decides it. I was permitted forward. I weighed nails against grains. I made the dish heavy, then light, then correct. Correct made no sound. Correct was a posture between 2 motions. Chalk waited. I wrote numbers beneath the scale, as though reading psalm lines backwards. The board accepted them. The teacher nodded. "Precise," she said. Not good, not fine. Precise is a variety of justice that has no friends and needs no applause. The teacher's hand bore a scar, a line on the palm that neither praised nor complained, a narrow memory of another edge. I did not keep my gaze there too long. One learns early where looks sound like questions and where like answers. Within me someone repeated, "Sharpness is justice. Bluntness is cruelty because it makes everything longer than it need be." Father had said this. I heard it here, where chalk decided the world, not steel. Nevertheless, a tool is a promise one must keep. Chapter 3. The Choir of Small Lungs. During reading, the class raised voices that consumed too much air. The stove withdrew its sympathy and did what it could. It worked. Children's breathing formed a choir, heard only by one who does not sing along. Asthma, sniffles, a child with the habit of whistling after each sentence as though calling something back. I registered the tones and ordered them. There are voices too heavy for the body that must carry them. There are voices too light that would fly away if teeth did not hold them fast. A boy read and caught. He sought a word none had lost. The teacher gave him a limb back, slowly. Slowly is a command disguised as request. He found the word and pretended it was his idea. All pretended so. Such courtesies hold a class together. I wondered whether courtesies hold a body together when it begins coming apart. The word for the state where everything knows its place did not occur to me. It is not peace. Perhaps rest. Rest is a space where even the unnecessary understands how to be silent. The child whose slate lay beneath my bench stared too frequently from the window. Glass reflected only him. Outside, a cat ran along the fence, its paws seemingly without weight. It could run without insulting the fence. I wished the class could read thus. I wished I could walk thus. I shall walk thus. Within me ran scenes I did not wish to stop. Not those that titillate people. No knives, no screams. Only hands. Hands placing things where they belong. Hands operating scales without insulting the tongue's judgment. Hands holding a head, neither tender nor harsh, only in the unadorned truth of grip that knows why it exists. Not every hold is embrace. Some are merely hold. Chapter 4. Yard play, with edges. Break burst in like an unauthorized visitor none refuses. Children rushed out, and the yard received them as water receives stones, briefly reluctant, then compliant. Wind tore at caps, and loosened hair stood like antennae asking better questions than mouths. I stood against the wall. One can stand at walls without fleeing. Walls are honest conversationalists. The old game with the cap began as though it had requested permission that morning. There are no new games, only old ones wearing new faces. The older boys held the stronger claim to the cap. The smaller held the necessary upon his head. Warmth, belonging, a remnant of dignity that costs nothing. I watched them as a scribe listens to dictation. The second body within me nodded. Now, he did not say. I approached. I asked for nothing. I stood in the path the hand took, and let the elbow discover there was no path there. It is a small, serious conversation when bodies speak with space. No insult, a correction. The cap fell where it belonged. I lifted it, gave it to the head that needed it. The boy was red about the eyes and large in breath. I pressed cloth to his knuckles that troubled blood without speaking of it. Warm, ferrous, immediate. No drama. A reminder that skin is a kind of contract. To restore means renew the contract. The others laughed briefly and let it be. Laughter is a short form of world flight. I stood another moment and felt the gaze at my back asking whether I wanted repetition. I wanted order, not repetition. Repetition is a method, not a virtue. I stepped back, and the yard made sounds one forgets when no longer seeing children. The scraping of stone on shoe, the quiet, small humming of cloth in windy air. The second body beside me breathed more shallowly. He is never far. He is there when edges speak and someone must answer. Chapter 5. The Shed. Anatomy in Miniature. After the final lesson, I pushed the shed's bolt, which moves without complaint. Within it smelled of rotting wood and something passing into rest. A bird lay in dust, as though rain had formatted it. Not quite dead, not quite present. Its eye was open and not attending. I knelt, not from devotion but from method. The small knife was in my pocket. No large one, no pride. Tools do not boast when working. I lifted the feather with 2 fingers, and the eye trembled. The bird made a sound that was no cry, rather a gesture that did not complete itself. I could have left it lying. I did not. Order demands occupations. Brief, said the second body, calm. I did so. Sense stepped forward, warm, ferrous, immediate. The space in the shed grew smaller and more honest. No spectacle. An ending. I found beneath skin the maps all bodies carry. No land is so forthright as this. Sinews saying how far they wish. Cartilage delivering a small, stubborn speech. Fibers merely asking to be left in peace. The knife did what it should, no more. I was swift. Slowness is cruelty when the matter is decided. I laid feather beside feather. Not because I wished to collect them, but because hands love rose when permitted to work. I washed the blade in a bucket whose water was ready to accept color and guilt. When I drew the bolt again, I heard the class singing outside, a song given to children so they might carry the homeward path more lightly. The second body beside me did not hum. He counts. He always counts. The bird had instructed me in efficiency's smaller mysteries, how quickly one could separate what belonged together, how cleanly connections severed when one understood the architecture. Each joint was an invitation written in a language older than words. The small blade had translated perfectly, requiring no force, only knowledge of where tissues wished to part. Chapter 6. The Lesson of Shadows. 1 head, 2 voices. On the homeward path, wind turned pages of my exercise book, as though it had questions for empty paper. I let it. The way is wiser when one does not contradict it. I saw my own shadows in farmyard entrances, and there were more than one. One walked as though walking. The other remained where it was and said, "Here you will stand later." I stopped and stepped into the shadow. It fit. It fit too well. At home hung cloths that lie had marked. I smelled them, and the scent was no longer work. It was a kind of full stop. Father sat at the bench, and the Sheffield knife lay in cloth as though sleeping. He did not cast me the look fathers cast when wanting to know something. He cast me the look men have when they know something none will speak. That day has an edge over which one should not stumble, if one does not wish to learn falling. I sat and let fingers rest upon the exercise book. The second body within me grew still. He grows still when steel is near. Perhaps he knows kinship, I do not know. Perhaps he is steel and I am the hand. I do not know. I know that chalk sets cuts upon day's board that remain when none look, and that knives set cuts that disappear when properly guided. One teaches presence, the other discretion. Both teach justice when not insulted. I wrote in the book, not school's lessons that everyone writes. I wrote another, not with chalk, with pencil that carries trees' patience within itself. I wrote, when breath counts 3, light leaves the skin. I wrote, when hand does not press, the world is ready. I wrote, steel is honest, wood pretends. Beside this, I drew nothing. I do not like drawing. Drawings are too loud. I wrote lines without pictures, as though they were psalms only I hear. The evening brought its own tutorial. How shadows lengthen, not merely across ground, but across intention. How darkness serves different purposes than light, not concealment, but clarification. In darkness, edges become more honest. Sounds carry their true weight. The distance between thought and action shortens until they are nearly the same thing. Chapter 7. Horror without teeth yet with bite. People demand that horror scream. I demand that it work. It needs no teeth to enter the head. It needs order. The worst one can do to a body is not wound it. It is to separate it from its order. An arm that no longer knows its angle, a gaze that loses its line. I have seen how a child loses its cap, and the head knows not where it ends. I have seen how a teacher breaks chalk, and the class loses faith for a breath. I sometimes imagine the room at night when none are there. The bench bearing grooves like scars. The board holding the last thing it was asked to hold. Chalk that does not go home because it owns no house. I imagine the stove, cold, and how air expects it to become speech again, once someone brings fire. I imagine how a door tests whether it remains a door. No blood is necessary to take the heart. One takes its order. The rest falls by itself. I walk mentally through alleys where I have never been. I walk so stone is not insulted. I choose shadows that do not lie. I imagine a hand that begins, not hard, not greedy, only correct. I see the line already there, and I wait until it shows itself. I hear the tone that does not sound. I see a face that knows nothing of me, and I think not of its story. Stories are for those who wish to speak later. I think of angles. I think of breath. I think of the place where order breaks when one asks politely. One day they will call me monster, because it is not understood that monsters only make visible what lies in all things. The possibility that order tips. I shall show no teeth. I shall speak no curses. I shall be silent. Silence is the cruelest knife. It makes all other sentences appear guilty. The second body within me has begun to speak more clearly. Not with words. Words are too crude for what he knows. He speaks with pressure, with timing, with the precise angle at which intervention becomes art. He knows things I am still learning, that the moment of highest tension is also the moment of greatest peace, that true work leaves no evidence of effort, that the perfect cut heals the wound it makes in reality. I write this to remember what school serves. Not letters, patience, not virtue, methodology, not comfort, preparation. Wind at the Hedge wrote more cleanly today. I could read its letters. S for cut, R for rest, O for order. It might have written blood, but it did not. Blood is a poor teacher. It always comes too late. Afterward, I hear the class breathe once more, as though I sat beneath the bench holding their feet, so they might not lift from the floor. I hear chalk pass over board like over skin that will not cry. I hear scales telling a child when enough is enough. And I hear within me two bodies walking, he who reads and he who counts. One of them will stop one day. The other will continue, on an evening when wind, light, and silence decide the same thing. The knife waits. The blade holds its edge through winter, through lessons, through small practices that prepare for larger work. Soon the village will grow too small for what I am becoming. Cities call to those who understand the mathematics of separation, the geometry of order restored. London, of opportunities for advanced education in subjects no school teaches.
I trust you enjoyed this glimpse into a most curious diary. If so, leave behind a small token of your delight with a like, and do consider joining our circle by subscribing. And remember, ring the little bell, and you shall be the very first to know when another diary or a fresh entry emerges from the shadows. And if a whisper stirs in your mind, a thought, a riddle, perhaps a name of someone whose secrets you would dare to uncover, leave it for me below. I read them one by one. And who knows, your wish may guide my hand to the very next diary I choose from my collection.